Everyone says Chinese cars depreciate horribly. If you buy one brand new, you'll apparently lose a fortune the moment you drive it off the showroom floor. But is that actually true, or is it just one of those things people keep repeating without ever looking at the numbers? So I decided to find out. I spent hours digging through online listings comparing real used car prices across South Africa. Not one or two cars, not one or two brands, but 73 cars from Chinese, German, Japanese, and Korean manufacturers. Every vehicle I looked at was a 2023 model with roughly 30,000 to 50,000 kilometers on the clock. Where possible, I compared the most commonly available mid-spec variants, although every manufacturer structures their model range differently, so it wasn't possible to compare identical trim levels across every brand. In a few cases, there simply weren't enough cars available within those mileage criteria, so I included a small number of higher mileage examples to build a more representative sample. This isn't a scientific study, but I do think it's a fair snapshot of what's happening in the South African used car market today. Some of the results completely surprised me, so let's get into it. Please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel to help me grow and so you don't miss out on future videos. Thank you so much for your support. Before we look at the numbers, let's quickly talk about why depreciation matters, because it's one of the biggest costs of owning a car. If you buy a car for 500,000 rands and sell it 3 years later for 350,000 rands, you've lost 150,000 rands, not because the car broke, not because you crashed it, simply because time passed. That's why depreciation deserves more attention. It's the cost many people don't think about until they decide to sell their car and experience things like shortfall if the car was financed. So with that in mind, let's see how these cars performed. Take note, the cars shown in this video don't necessarily represent the exact trim levels used in the calculations. We'll start with one of the most popular Chinese SUVs in South Africa, the Haval Jolion. I looked at 6 examples of the 2023 Haval Jolion Super Luxury Automatic. When new, this model retailed for 446,950 rands. Across the listings I analyzed, the average asking price was approximately 333,000 rands. That means the Jolion has lost around 114,000 rands in value, or roughly 25.4% of its original value. At first glance, that sounds like quite a lot, but remember that number, because later we're going to compare it with some of its biggest rivals. Next up, the Chery Tiggo 4 Pro. This is one of South Africa's best-selling compact SUVs. I analyzed 10 examples of the Elite CVT. When new, it cost 356,000 rands. Today, the average asking price sits just under 272,000 rands. That's a depreciation figure of 23.6%. Already, that's a little better than the Jolion, and perhaps better than many people expected. Then came the Omoda C5. This one caught my attention immediately. When new, the Elegance S retailed for 509,900 rands. The average used asking price, just over 330,000 rands. That's a loss of nearly 180,000 rands, or 35.2% depreciation. Now that's a very different story. What's interesting here is that Omoda and Chery are closely related brands, yet their depreciation in this sample isn't remotely the same. Now to be fair, I sampled the Omoda's top of the range trim, which is probably why it suffered more depreciation than the other two cars. There wasn't enough examples within our criteria for the calculations, so I had to go with the Elegant S. So even within Chinese manufacturers, there are clear differences, which already tells us something important. We probably shouldn't treat Chinese cars as if they're all the same. Now let's compare those results with Germany. The giant in this segment and price point is definitely VW. We'll start with the Volkswagen T-Cross. The 2023 Comfort Line DSG retailed for 418,200 rands. The average asking price across 7 examples came roughly to 336,000 rands. That's 19.6% depreciation, a very solid result. Then I looked at another South African favorite, the Volkswagen Polo Life DSG. When new, 445,400 rands. Average used asking price, about 329,000 rands. Depreciation, 26.2%. Now that's interesting. The Polo actually depreciated slightly more than both the Chery Tiggo 4 Pro and the Haval Jolion in this sample. I don't think many people would have predicted that, but I couldn't leave out South Africa's best-selling passenger car, the Volkswagen Polo Vivo. The 2023 1.6 Comfort Line automatic retailed for 326,800 rands. Across 8 used examples, the average asking price came in at roughly 231,000 rands. That's 29.2% depreciation. Even the Polo Vivo depreciated more than both the Chery Tiggo 4 Pro and the Haval Jolion. Considering the Vivo's popularity in South Africa, that was one of the more surprising findings in this investigation. Moving over to Japan, let's start with the Toyota Corolla Cross, probably one of the benchmarks in this segment and price point. New price 483,500 rands. Average used asking price just over 375,000 rands. Depreciation only 22.3%. Exactly the kind of result you'd expect from Toyota. Its reputation clearly still helps it retain value. Next up was the Suzuki Baleno GLX Auto. Although I had to include a couple of slightly higher mileage examples to increase the sample size, the result was still very impressive. From a new price of 321,900 rands, the average asking price worked out to around 251,000 rands. That's just 22.1% depreciation, virtually matching the Corolla Cross. Then came the biggest surprise from Japan, the Suzuki Swift. I looked at 5 examples of the 2023 Swift GLX Auto. When new, 248,900 rands. Average used asking price around 226,000 rands. That's only 9.2% depreciation, an incredible result. Of course, there are reasons for that. The Swift has consistently been in high demand, it's relatively affordable, and there is strong buyer interest in the used market. But regardless of the reason, the numbers are outstanding. Finally, let's talk about the Korean representative, the Kia Sonet. The Sonet retailed for 436,995 rands for the 1.5-liter EX automatic. The average asking price from 9 used examples came in at around 273,000 rands. That's 37.5% depreciation. In fact, it was the worst performing vehicle in this entire comparison. Not the Chery, not the Haval, not even the Omoda, the Kia. And that's exactly why it's dangerous to make assumptions before looking at the data. So, what have we actually learned? Well, the biggest takeaway is that the phrase Chinese cars depreciate badly is simply too broad. Based on the cars I analyzed, that's not really what the numbers show. Yes, the Omoda C5 depreciated heavily, but the Chery Tiggo 4 Pro performed surprisingly well. The Haval Jolion wasn't far behind, and both ended up much closer to established rivals than many people would probably expect. In fact, both Chinese SUVs retain their value better than the Volkswagen Polo and even the Polo Vivo in this comparison. Meanwhile, Toyota once again proved why its reputation for resale value exists. Suzuki impressed me the most with both the Baleno and especially the Swift delivering exceptional resale performance. But it's because I didn't have enough examples for a more accurate calculation for these two. The Kia Sonet recorded the highest depreciation figure of every vehicle I analyzed. So perhaps the real conclusion isn't that Chinese cars depreciate badly. It's that some models do, some don't, exactly the same as manufacturers from Germany, Japan, or Korea. Country of origin doesn't automatically determine resale value. Individual models do. Brand perception does, demand does, supply does, and ultimately the used market decides. If you're shopping for a new car, I hope this investigation gave you something more valuable than opinions. It gave you numbers. And while this wasn't a perfect study, I think it's a useful snapshot of where the South African market sits today. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Were you surprised by these results? Do you think Chinese cars have finally earned the trust of South African buyers? Or do you still think they'll struggle to match brands like Toyota and Volkswagen in the long run? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this type of data-driven investigation, make sure you're subscribed because I've got plenty of more market analysis videos on the way. And that's cheers from me.